They say an Oscar win can change everything, but in Hollywood, sometimes it changes nothing at all. Tonight, we dive into the overlooked corners of movie history, spotlighting the stars who once held the Academy's highest honor, only to watch their fame vanish like a set after closing night. What causes a celebrated name to slip into obscurity? Stay with us, because some of these stories don't just challenge the Hollywood myth, they'll make you question what the spotlight really leaves behind. Louisa Rener. In the mid-1930s, Hollywood's brightest spotlight found Louisa Rener, a delicate European beauty whose intensity and authenticity promised a new era of screen acting. When Rener took home the Academy Award for Best Actress for The Great Ziegfeld in 1936, she was hailed as the next Garbo. The following year, she made history, becoming the first actor to win back-to-back Oscars, this time for her wrenching performance in The Good Earth. For a brief, electric moment, it seemed Rener's future in Hollywood was limitless. But within just a couple of years, her name became a Hollywood cautionary tale. Despite her talent, Rener's fiercely independent spirit clashed with the iron grip of MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer. Rener wasn't content to play the good little girl the system demanded. She challenged scripts, questioned motives, and refused to simply smile and accept typecasting. Hollywood, still trapped in its own assembly line mentality, was not ready for an artist who worked from the inside out. In 1938, Rener walked away, telling Mayer her source had dried up. The move stunned Hollywood. She was still in her 20s, already a double Oscar winner. But her refusal to play by studio rules cost her dearly. She returned to Europe, and aside from one contractually obligated film and a smattering of television appearances decades later, Louise Rener all but vanished from the silver screen. Time has obscured her legacy. While Bette Davis and Katharine Hepburn became institutions, Rener's name faded into trivia nights and Oscar record books. Even today, only the most devoted classic film buffs can recall her haunting performances, her rapid fall, and the way she ghosted through the rest of the 20th century. In Hollywood, disappearing while on top may be the rarest act of all. Alice Brady. In the crowded, glitzy late 1930s, Alice Brady was a rare double threat. A Broadway star with real stage gravitas, and a Hollywood character actress who could command the camera. Her sharp wit and expressive face made her a favorite among directors. But it was her role as the feisty matriarch in Old Chicago, 1937, that finally earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Brady's acceptance speech was the talk of the industry. Only, rumor had it, she never actually accepted the Oscar in person. An imposter allegedly walked off with the statuette at the ceremony, a bizarre twist that mirrored the oddities of her later career. Brady's win was well-deserved. She'd already been nominated the year before for My Man Godfrey, and was considered one of the best supporting players in Hollywood. But just as her star was ascending, fate intervened. Brady was secretly fighting cancer, a battle she kept hidden from the press and her colleagues. As her health declined, her screen appearances dwindled, and her last film, Young Mr. Lincoln, 1939, was released after her death. Unlike some Oscar winners who flamed out due to scandal or poor choices, Alice Brady's vanishing act was both tragic and swift. Within 2 years of her big win, she was gone at just 46, leaving behind a handful of films and a reputation as a player's player, someone actors admired, even if audiences quickly forgot her name. Hollywood moved on, and with the transition from the golden age to wartime cinema, her memory faded, leaving her as one of the Academy's most poignant what-ifs. Paul Lukas. Few actors could command the gravitas that Paul Lukas brought to the screen. Born in Hungary, Lukas had a steady, dignified presence, making him a go-to for roles that required both warmth and moral authority. He built a steady career through the 1930s, but it was his role as the anti-fascist protagonist in Watch on the Rhine, 1943, that made Hollywood history. Lucas's performance, full of quiet strength and conviction, captured the era's anxieties about war and totalitarianism, earning him the Academy Award for Best Actor. At the time, Lucas's win seemed like a passing of the torch. The European émigré, recognized at the height of World War II, celebrated as a new kind of leading man for a world in crisis. But the win proved to be the peak, not the beginning, of a new era. While Lucas continued to work for many years, the prestige roles dried up quickly. Hollywood's tastes shifted after the war, turning toward younger, more American-born stars, and Lucas was gradually pushed to the margins. He took on supporting parts, some television work, and even returned to the stage, but he never again came close to the limelight he'd briefly commanded. By the 1960s, Lucas was virtually unknown to younger audiences. His Oscar went a distant memory. He passed away quietly in Tangier in 1971, long forgotten by the very industry that had once cheered his name. Today, Watch on the Rhine is rarely discussed outside film classes, and Paul Lucas, an Oscar winner, remains a footnote in Hollywood's long history of talent that glimmered, then faded into obscurity. Edmund Gwen. Mention the name Edmund Gwen today, and you might get a faint flicker of recognition, maybe a nostalgic smile from someone who remembers Miracle on 34th Street. For a brief period in the late 1940s, though, Gwen wasn't just a kindly face. He was Hollywood's embodiment of magic and hope. Born in London and trained on the English stage, Gwen made a smooth transition to American films, building a reputation as a supporting actor who could steal scenes with a single raised eyebrow. His portrayal of Kris Kringle in Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, was the role of a lifetime. A Santa Claus so sincere that even the skeptics in the audience wanted to believe. The performance earned Gwen the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and for a moment, he seemed untouchable. But after his Oscar win, Gwen found himself increasingly typecast. Hollywood saw him as the go-to wise old man, or kindly grandfather, and he was repeatedly offered variations on the same gentle persona. While the roles kept coming, the creative challenge disappeared. Gwen's presence, once electrifying, became background comfort. By the early 1950s, the offer slowed, and new generations of actors and audiences crowded out the old favorites. Gwen made his last significant screen appearance in Mr. 880, 1950, earning another Oscar nomination, but failing to reclaim his former glory. He faded quietly into retirement, never seeking the spotlight, and passed away in 1959, with little fanfare compared to the glory days of his Oscar triumph. Today, Edmund Gwen's Oscar win is often overshadowed by the Christmas classic itself. The man behind Kris Kringle became as much a legend as the role he played, cherished once a year, then tucked away with the holiday decorations, his career quietly gathering dust in Hollywood's attic. Fay Bainter. Fay Bainter's name doesn't appear on many Hollywood greatest lists, yet her career was a model of elegance, versatility, and grace, an actress who always made her mark, even in supporting roles. Her big moment came in 1938, when she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her performance as the conflicted Aunt Belle in Jezebel, opposite Bette Davis. That same year, she was also nominated for Best Actress for White Banners, making her the first performer to be nominated in 2 categories in a single year, a feat that turned heads and made industry insiders believe she was destined for even greater things. Bainter was a consummate professional, with decades of stage experience behind her before arriving in Hollywood. Her performances were subtle, layered, and deeply human. She made every character feel authentic, whether maternal or morally torn. But after her Oscar win, Bainter's career trajectory didn't accelerate the way it did for other winners. Instead, she found herself increasingly relegated to maternal or secondary roles, the industry pigeonholing her talents as she entered her 50s. The transition from leading lady to supporting matron happened fast in Hollywood's golden age, and Bainter, never one to chase publicity, quietly accepted the new reality. Her later films, while solid, rarely gave her the spotlight she deserved. She continued to work steadily, on stage and screen, her name gradually slipping from headlines as the public's attention shifted to flashier stars. By the late 1940s, she was nearly forgotten outside the tight-knit community of classic film devotees. Bainter's legacy remains understated, a reminder that even Oscar gold can't guarantee a lasting spotlight. Today, she's best remembered by film historians and those who look closely at the credits, a forgotten gem in the crown of early Hollywood. George Arless. When George Arless walked onto the stage to accept the Oscar for Best Actor in 1930 for his role in Disraeli, he was already a legend, at least in theatrical circles. Arless, with his sharp features and commanding voice, had built a formidable reputation on the English stage before Hollywood came calling. His performance as the iconic British Prime Minister was so precise and dignified that it set a new standard for film acting, bridging the gap between silent melodrama and the emerging world of talking pictures. At the time, Arless was one of the few major stage stars to successfully transition into the era of sound, and his Oscar win seemed to promise a long cinematic reign. He followed up Disraeli with a handful of thoughtful, well-crafted performances. But as the 1930s wore on, Hollywood's tastes evolved rapidly. The demand for youthful energy and glamour began to overshadow the gravitas of veteran performers like Arless. By the end of the decade, he found himself less in demand, increasingly viewed as a relic of a more mannered, classical age. Rather than chase roles that didn't fit his style, Arless retired quietly, returning to England and fading from public memory as the world plunged into war and Hollywood's golden years marched on. When he passed away in 1946, it barely registered in the industry he'd helped shape. Today, George Arless's Oscar win is a historical curiosity, a footnote from the dawn of the talkies. His legacy, once so influential, now lingers only in film history books and the faint echoes of his clipped, patrician delivery in the earliest surviving Academy reels. Joan Fontaine. Joan Fontaine's Oscar win is a paradox, one of classic Hollywood's great triumphs, and yet a precursor to one of its most quietly tragic fade-outs. In 1941, Fontaine became the only actor to ever win an Oscar for an Alfred Hitchcock film, taking Best Actress for her nuanced, trembling performance in Suspicion. She had already made waves as the haunted heroine of Rebecca, and her elegance, poise, and subtlety set her apart from the era's more bombastic stars. For a few years, Fontaine was inescapable. Her refined beauty and complex emotional range made her a favorite of directors who craved sophistication on screen. But beneath her polished surface, Fontaine was locked in one of Hollywood's most notorious sibling rivalries, with her sister, Olivia de Havilland. The feud, simmering even as both soared to Academy Award glory, eventually cast a long shadow over her career. After her Oscar win, Fontaine enjoyed a run of strong performances throughout the 1940s. But, as the decade waned, so did her roles. The influx of new talent, shifting tastes, and her own reputation for being difficult began to close doors in a town that never forgave a woman for growing older or standing her ground. Fontaine transitioned to stage and television, but she never again touched the heights she'd known in her youth. By the 1960s, the once celebrated star was largely forgotten by moviegoers, her films relegated to late-night television and art house revivals. Joan Fontaine lived a long life, her legacy preserved in awards and archives rather than the public imagination. For all her talent and accolades, her career's quiet eclipse stands as a stark reminder of how even the brightest Oscar lights can flicker and fade away in Hollywood's relentless glare. Gail Sergard. Gail Sergard's career is a study in the mercurial fortunes of Hollywood fame and how easily triumph can become tragedy. Sergard's Hollywood debut was nothing short of spectacular. She won the very first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 1936 for her cunning, exotic performance in Anthony Adverse. With her angular beauty and dark, expressive eyes, Sondergaard brought a new, magnetic energy to supporting roles, playing women who were mysterious, dangerous, and almost always unforgettable. Hollywood quickly recognized her as an actress of rare versatility, and she seemed destined for lasting stardom. She was even cast as the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, a role she famously lost when producers changed their vision. But Sondergaard's fate would be shaped not by missed opportunities, but by the political paranoia of the late 1940s and 1950s. Her husband, director Herbert Biberman, was one of the Hollywood 10, blacklisted for refusing to cooperate with the House Un-American Activities Committee. By association, Sondergaard's career was all but destroyed. Studios wouldn't touch her. Directors who once praised her talent now avoided her calls. The scandal left Sondergaard exiled from the industry she had conquered, and she vanished from the screen for 2 decades, forced into an artistic wilderness from which there was no real return. She made a few small appearances later in life, but the world had moved on. Her Oscar, once a symbol of infinite promise, became a bittersweet relic of a career derailed by forces far beyond her control. Today, Gail Sondergaard is remembered by film historians as a casualty of Hollywood's darkest chapter. Her early brilliance faded, not by choice, but by the ruthless machinery of politics and fear. Harold Russell. Harold Russell's story stands almost alone in Oscar history. A non-professional actor who delivered such an authentic, heartbreaking performance that Hollywood had to break its own rules. In The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946, Russell, a real-life World War II veteran who lost both hands in combat, played Homer Parrish, a sailor struggling to readjust to civilian life. The performance was raw, vulnerable, and profoundly moving. The Academy was so struck by his work that they awarded Russell not just the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, but also a special honorary Oscar for inspiring veterans everywhere. It was a career-making moment, but for Russell, there was never a career in the Hollywood sense. He returned to everyday life, working for veterans' causes and declining the handful of film offers that came his way. Acting had been a detour, not a destination. The studios were unsure how to cast him. Audiences were moved, but Hollywood's narrow vision for stars left little room for a man with Russell's background and injuries. When he did appear on screen again, it was mostly on television cameos or public service projects. Russell's later years were marked by financial struggles. In 1992, he famously sold his Oscar statuette at auction to pay for his wife's medical expenses, a desperate act that sparked headlines, but few offers from the industry he'd once stunned. By the time of his death in 2002, Harold Russell was a legend to a few, a trivia answer to others, and a poignant reminder that not every Oscar winner is meant for stardom. For Russell, the award marked a single, shining moment in the spotlight, after which he, quite willingly, faded back into the real world he'd fought so bravely to defend. Anne Revere. Anne Revere's face was never that of a leading lady, but for a time, it was among the most familiar in Hollywood. Her presence radiated honesty and gravity, making her the industry's favorite choice for strong, dignified mothers. In 1945, her unvarnished performance as Elizabeth Brown in National Velvet, the steadfast, quietly supportive mother to Elizabeth Taylor's determined horse racer, earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Revere's roles were never glamorous, but she brought a quiet power and emotional resonance to every scene, making her one of the most respected character actresses of her era. Yet, just as her career should have soared, the tides turned against her. Revere, a proud activist, was swept up in the Red Scare of the late 1940s and 50s. As a vocal member of the Screen Actors Guild and a known supporter of progressive causes, she was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Refusing to testify or name names, Rever found herself blacklisted. The offers vanished overnight. The very industry that had celebrated her talent turned cold and silent. For years, Rever could not find film work, forced to survive by teaching drama in New York, far from the cameras that had once embraced her. Though she would eventually return to acting in the late 1960s, her moment had passed. She never reclaimed the visibility or prestige she once enjoyed. Today, her Oscar-winning performance is a treasure for film buffs, but Anne Rever herself is largely unknown outside the circle of classic Hollywood scholars. Her story is a powerful reminder. In Hollywood, even the truest talent can be banished by politics and paranoia, and greatness alone can't keep you in the spotlight forever. James Dunn. James Dunn's career arc could have been scripted as a Hollywood cautionary tale. The epitome of the nice guy in early 1930s musicals and romantic dramas, Dunn was the charming everyman audiences adored. But by the time he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 1945 for A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, the shine on his stardom was already fading. His role as the well-meaning but troubled father Johnny Nolan, whose dreams outstrip his means, mirrored Dunn's own struggles. His performance was raw and vulnerable, revealing depths that had been obscured by years of light comedies and boy-next-door roles. Despite his Oscar triumph, Dunn's personal demons, chiefly his battles with alcoholism, had already derailed his career. Hollywood, ever fickle, quickly moved on, wary of the trouble that came with casting him. The studios offered fewer roles, relegating him to B-movies, guest spots, and eventually television. Dunn's decline was as rapid as his rise had been. By the 1950s, he was nearly invisible in the industry that had once cheered him. He died in 1967, his legacy all but forgotten, except by those who remembered the fragile brilliance he brought to A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Dunn's story is a haunting reminder that talent, and even Oscar gold, aren't enough to withstand the combined forces of industry indifference and personal hardship. Today, his name is barely a whisper in Hollywood's vast pantheon, a relic of a time when a single performance could briefly redeem a lifetime of struggle, before fading into the shadows once more. Mercedes McCambridge. When Mercedes McCambridge won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in All the King's Men, 1949, she was hailed as a revelation, a magnetic, volcanic presence who could match any leading man's intensity. Orson Welles called her the world's greatest living radio actress, and Hollywood seemed to agree. McCambridge, with her sharp features and commanding voice, brought a rare ferocity to her roles, burning up the screen with both vulnerability and steel. But her Oscar victory was a peak she never quite recaptured. Although she worked steadily in film, radio, and television, she never again achieved the visibility or acclaim of her earliest triumph. Her career was further complicated by personal struggles, battles with alcoholism, a contentious divorce, and a devastating custody battle that played out in public. In the 1970s, she gained a measure of infamy for providing the uncredited voice of the demon in The Exorcist. But even this eerie contribution went mostly unrecognized by the wider public at the time. McCambridge's later years were marked by personal tragedy, including the shocking suicide of her son, for which she was publicly and unfairly blamed by tabloid press. Hollywood had moved on, and by the 1980s, she was a virtual stranger to the red carpet she once walked with such promise. Today, Mercedes McCambridge is remembered by genre enthusiasts and film scholars. Her Oscar win a curious footnote. Her story is a testament to the volatility of fame and the brutal swiftness with which even the most talented can be pushed to the margins. Victor McLaglin. Victor McLaglin was one of Hollywood's most robust and instantly recognizable character actors of the 1930s. With his burly frame, weathered features, and British charm, he brought raw authenticity to every role he played. His crowning achievement came with the Oscar for Best Actor in The Informer, 1935, a John Ford film that plunged deep into the moral complexities of Ireland's civil strife. McLaglin's portrayal of Gypo Nolan, a tortured, pitiable informant, won him critical raves and an Academy Award, cementing his reputation as a leading man who could balance brutality and heartbreak in equal measure. But after his Oscar win, Hollywood's attention wandered. While McLaglin remained in demand for Ford's later films, often cast as the rough-edged, lovable lout, he never again took center stage the way he did in The Informer. The arrival of younger, more glamorous stars pushed him into supporting roles, where he provided reliable color but no longer commanded the spotlight. He worked steadily throughout the 1940s and 50s, but his larger-than-life screen persona grew out of sync with Hollywood's changing tastes. By the time of his death in 1959, McLaglin was already a relic of a bygone era. His Oscar win largely forgotten, except by hardcore film historians and John Ford aficionados. Today, Victor McLaglin's story is a classic case of early stardom fading into character work, and then into obscurity. His legacy preserved only in the archives of Hollywood's golden years, and the echoes of a role that once defined an era. Donald Crisp. Donald Crisp was one of those rare figures whose fingerprints are found all over Hollywood history, even if most audiences today don't recognize his name. An early collaborator of D.W. Griffith and a trusted character actor for decades, Crisp was the ultimate studio stalwart. His finest hour came with the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of the wise, loving patriarch in John Ford's How Green Was My Valley, 1941. Crisp's performance embodied the spirit of a family rooted in tradition and resilience. His gentle authority elevating the film's emotional impact and helping it win Best Picture. For a while, Crisp enjoyed steady work as the industry's go-to father figure, appearing in numerous prestigious productions. But as the studio system crumbled and the post-war years ushered in new kinds of storytelling, the demand for his particular brand of gravitas faded. Crisp, who had spent decades shaping Hollywood from both in front of and behind the camera, quietly accepted smaller roles and eventually retired. Despite a career spanning over 100 films, his name faded as younger, flashier stars dominated the headlines. By the time he died in 1974, Donald Crisp's immense contribution to cinema was mostly a memory for classic film scholars. His Oscar, once a symbol of his quiet power, gathered dust while the industry marched relentlessly forward. Today, Crisp remains a forgotten giant, one whose career is a testament to the hundreds of craftsmen who shaped Hollywood's golden age, only to be pushed aside by the relentless tides of fame. Hugh Griffith. Hugh Griffith's story is proof that even an Oscar can't always secure a lasting place in the spotlight. Born in Wales, Griffith was a dynamic, scene-stealing presence in British and American films throughout the 1950s. His big moment came with Ben-Hur, 1959, where his exuberant portrayal of Sheikh Ilderim, an ally to Charlton Heston's title character, brought comic relief and a vital spark to one of Hollywood's grandest epics. The role won him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and opened doors to more high-profile projects on both sides of the Atlantic. But Griffith's unpredictable energy, which made him so memorable on screen, was paired with a turbulent, off-screen life. His battles with alcoholism and a reputation for being difficult on set quickly caught up with him. Studios, always wary of risk, began to pass him over for leading roles. Griffith continued to act in a steady stream of supporting parts and television appearances, but the era of grand, character-driven epics ended, and with it, his time at the forefront. By the late 1960s and 70s, Griffith's once promising Hollywood profile was all but gone. He died in 1980, his Oscar often overshadowed by stories of excess and missed opportunities. Today, Hugh Griffith is a favorite of classic film buffs. But few modern viewers know his name or the wild charisma he brought to his greatest roles. His Oscar is a poignant reminder that for some, even the highest recognition in Hollywood is no guarantee of immortality. In Hollywood, an Oscar is supposed to guarantee immortality, but as these forgotten winners show, fame can vanish faster than applause. Behind each golden statue lies a story of triumph, struggle, and, sometimes, heartbreak. As we look back on these lost legends, it's clear that even the brightest spotlight can fade. Which other vanished Oscar stories deserve a second look? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget, true greatness isn't always written in gold, but in memory.